At Capella University, we believe accessible education can make a difference. That's why we offer scholarship opportunities to all eligible students. Un futuro diferente está más cerca de lo que crees con Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we take your questions about all things Orioles in our latest mailbag. And this mailbag is going to touch on a broad range of topics, from the trade deadline to Baseball America's new top 30 list for the Orioles farm system, other news out of the minor leagues, and more. But take a moment here to plug past and upcoming shows. First of all, Andy Koska at the Baltimore Banner joined us earlier this week in a really fun interview. I hope that you have had a chance to listen to that yet. And if you haven't, be sure to do so after you listen to this episode. And Bob, Nick, and I will be on Sunday night at a special time to bring you live coverage of the MLB draft. We will be on for all three of the Orioles' day one picks. So you're not going to miss that. So, guys, what are your thoughts on not just our most recent show, but what we have coming up over the weekend here?
Andy's always great. You know, you just ask him a question and then just watch him spin gold for 10 minutes. It's the best. He's awesome. Great work at the Banner. Always fun when we have him on the show. Really enjoyed that. And yeah, couldn't be more excited for draft night, to be honest with you. The closer it gets, the more excited I get. Just a lot of high draft picks coming our way. And then, as always, we get to follow along, see where they fit into our top 50 and see how they perform. Baseball never ends. That's why it's a beautiful sport.
Yeah, it's supposed to be break time coming up, and I feel like I'm ready to crank out even more content here. I've already taken time off work, not going to lie. Great timing, too, for me to take off work, but that's a whole nother podcast in of itself. Andy's interview was great. Good insights. I always enjoy his perspective. He keeps it real as well, which I also appreciate. So definitely go check that out. And yeah, lots of draft coverage coming up, the live show. I'm sure we'll be back live again Monday night to recap the rest of the draft picks, articles, more podcasts. We're going to be throwing content out like crazy, I feel like, over the next 2 weeks, but it will be a lot of fun.
We'll go now into our mailbag. I'm just going to jump in here with this first question from Bobby Jones, and it is a deadline question. Given the injuries to so many of the rentals on the Orioles, do you think it's more likely that Ramon Laureano is dealt? Nick, I will start with you on this one.
Probably. I've heard on some other shows there is some love out there among fans that they would like to acquire Ramon Laureano for their team. I honestly wouldn't mind. Would not mind. Get that one right there. If he's stuck around. He seems like he's outperforming my expectations this year. I feel like that's kind of the deal, though. When the Orioles bring in this, center field type, I remember my first reaction to the Aaron Hicks signing, being like, why are we doing this? And that turned out to be a pretty good one. Same thing with Ramon Laureano. I think everyone's like, why are we doing this? He's playing pretty well. I'm enjoying seeing him out there on the field and what he brings to the club. And it seems like he's one of the big vibes guy. Take that for what it's worth. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't mind keeping him around.
Yeah, honestly, unless they are quote unquote overwhelmed, because overwhelmed might just be like a guy that slots into like the top 20 range of our prospect list. Then I think for a cheap $6 million option year, he can come back and be that right-handed fourth outfielder that plays more than a normal fourth outfielder because he can hit righties and lefties, and he was signed to hit lefties, and he's hit righties better this year, but historically he hits lefties. Seems like a good clubhouse presence, so I think it's win-win either way. They're only going to trade him, in my opinion, if they're getting good value, because that's just the way Elias in this front office operates in general. So yeah, I'm secretly hoping he comes back for next year, but I also would not be surprised at all if he's traded for like I don't know, a relief prospect that's in double or triple A plus an international guy that's intriguing, something like that.
I do think it's likely that he's going to be dealt, and I think it's more about his value than the injuries to the other rentals, although Zach Eflin going on the IL and not pitching well before he got hurt does do a little bit of damage to the returns that I thought the Orioles might be able to get back in this deadline. But going back to Laureano specifically, there's a lot to like there if you're a contending team to pick up a guy who has the track record that he does of at least being a solid platoon outfielder. And this year he's not only hitting well, but he's hitting well against right-handers, which is not the job he was brought in to do. Nevertheless, he's done it very well for the Orioles. So I do agree with you guys, though, that if he's not traded, I won't be upset because there's a very affordable option for next year. And you could have, looking ahead, you could have him and Dylan Beavers on the same roster. He doesn't have to take away at bats from Beavers because Beavers hits from the left side of the plate. He's a little bit younger. There's more development opportunities you're going to want to make for him. So, yeah, that would be the logical move if you trade Laureano. But I think that to bring up Beavers, but I think you could fit both on the roster.
Yeah, I just like having him there too while we see if Dylan Beavers can cut it at the major league level, if Judd Fabian can cut it at the major league level. So, yeah. Next question from Vivek here says, what are your realistic predictions now in terms of the final record for this season with 73 games remaining? Let's start with Zach on this one.
Where I have kind of resigned myself to this season going, and it's not an outcome if you had told me back in March or early April that if this was going to happen, I would have been happy. But now, living in the reality that we live in, I would be happy with this. I think they'll finish somewhere around 77 to 80 wins. And we'll look back at the year and we'll think to ourselves, if they just had not dug themselves such a big hole over the first 2 months of the season, they could have gotten in as a third wild card, and they were playing their best baseball over the last 2 months of the year. Everybody was healthy. They might have been able to make a run in the playoffs. And it's unfortunate we didn't get to see that because the first 2 months put them in a hole that they couldn't get out of. And I actually don't think the deadline is going to change that much because the players, in my mind, the players are going to be moved. You can offset their departures by whatever returns you get from them. If there's anybody major league ready, let's say that, yes, you deal Ryan O'Hearn, but on the flip side, you create more at bats for Kobe Mayo and you get a productive 2 months out of him. That's not going to change. It's not going to change a whole lot from what would have happened if you had held on to O'Hearn. So I don't think the deadline is going to affect it that much. I think it's just players getting healthy and starting to perform closer to what we know they can do.
Yeah, completely agree with the second part of your answer there, and if not the exact record, but yeah, the basic idea that, and not only just get healthy and get back to playing the way they have, just these are young players that are still developing. They can still get better as the year and the years go on. So get Passaio up at the end of the year, but I'm going to say 80 and 82. It would be cleaner if they could fight all the way back to get to 500, and I think maybe they do late in the season, but then eventually they end up 80 and 82, and I think you got to call that a win with the way the season started and 18 games, 500, and just the momentum being built. I think I'd be not happy about it, but content that they at least had a respectable record at the end of the day.
You're just looking for small wins at this point. That could hopefully lead to bigger wins in the near immediate future. I'm going to say somewhere around 75 wins probably in total. But more importantly, I want to see, once we get later to the year, of course, these younger guys, Kobe Mayo is going to be around, I would think. Gunnar, Westberg, hopefully both healthy in the same lineup together, with Cowser healthy in the lineup together. But specifically like Kobe, Jackson Holiday, even Cowser and Westberg to an extent, even though I feel like these guys have really cemented themselves. But I want to see this young core step up in like a key series where they may be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, but they're going up against, I don't have the schedule in front of me to give a specific example, but they're going up against a playoff team who needs to win this series against Baltimore. Every article, every podcast from their side of the fan base is saying you have to take 2 out of 3 or like we're done. We're not making the playoffs. And I want to see this young team step up. Brandon Young on the mound. I want to see those young guys step up and take that series from them. Play the Slayer at the end of the year. And specifically, though, not have Charlie Morton throw a 7-inning masterclass in September. I don't care about that. I want to see the young guys specifically step up. So record is what it is, but I want to see key moments like that to give us some optimism as we head into 2026.
There's 3 opportunities in late September where that would be very sweet. Home series against the Yankees, September 18th through the 21st. The final home series of the season against the Rays, the 23rd through the 25th, and then up in Yankee Stadium for the final weekend, the 26th through the 28th.
Let's go. Nailed it. Perfect answer there. That would be beautiful poetry in motion. I'll go to a question now from EJ, who says, how many of the June OTV top 50 will make their debut in the second half? Over under 4.5. Nick?
I think the correct line should be 2.5 personally, and I'm still going to take the under on that. And I think it'd be Beavers and Basayo. I don't know, with Fabian's injury, we'll see how long that keeps him out and what he does when he comes back. And the trade deadline, of course, is going to throw a wrench into all of this and cause chaos. But I'm going to say if 4.5, I'm going way under that, I think.
There's a part of me that wants to go bold and take the over with the 2 players that Nick just mentioned, Beavers and Basayo, and then throw in Keegan Gillis, Cameron Weston, and maybe one other arm to that mix. But I'm going to go with Nick and agree with the under and probably keep it to those 2 guys. I do think that Gillis and Weston are good dark horse candidates, albeit for different reasons. Weston is going to be Rule 5 eligible this offseason. Maybe you put him on the 40-man roster early just in case a need, and if the need arises in the month of September, whether it's a second game of a doubleheader or you simply just run out of arms and you need a guy to make a spot start, you give Weston the bump and you have him make that one start, and now he's on the 40-man, and you don't have to worry about making that move in the offseason. Gillis, the path would be maybe he gets up a little bit earlier and gets more time because they do trade a reliever or 2 at the deadline. And they look, and after a month of AAA, he's got a really high strikeout rate with a good ERA, and he forces their hands to promote him. I would love nothing more than to see that happen. But given how long it took them to promote him from AA to AAA, I don't expect a quick turnaround in the majors.
Yeah, the Weston thing I could definitely see because we just had Andy Kostka on the last episode. Who's going to pitch these games if they trade all these pitchers? Well, Cameron Weston's there. He's available. He's going through a acclimation year with the AAA ball and the zone and all that. But I think his stuff continues to look good. It wouldn't be the worst idea to give him a taste at the end of the year. Keegan Gillis, I think it's more likely he's added to the 40-man roster in the offseason than he's added before the season ends to make his debut, just because there are some guys at AAA, Geraldo, Selby, Stroud, who could come up and give those innings at the end of the year. Fabian, I'll say he does make his major league debut this year, so I'll say 3 is the ultimate answer for me, so definitely under.
Go now to this question from Bobby Jones. Biggest free agent desire this offseason, both dream pick, Kyle Tucker, and more realistic. Let's start with Nick on this one.
I was going to say, it's the first week of July. Why are we thinking about the offseason? But given the way the season's folded out, fair. I just want, I don't know, I would pull up the list here and see, and it's not the most thrilling list, I think. Of course, everybody's going to want Kyle Tucker. That's kind of the gimme answer. I want Framber Valdez. I wanted to trade for him so badly in the offseason. Now, of course, you're not trading for him. But if he's going to be a free agent in the offseason, I would love Fromber in this rotation. I was really big on the Zach Gallen trade idea as well, but it seems like I really enjoy watching Arizona games for that West Coast late night, not ready to go to bed baseball fix. And Gallen's like, if he starts out well, it seems like by the time you look at the end of his outing, box score doesn't look too good. Or he starts out just first inning, he's clearly done, giving up 3-4 runs. So I think I'm out on Zach Gallen. So if I'm looking at these pitchers, Dylan Cease is a weird one based on the year he's having in San Diego. Give me Fromber. Give me that connection he already has with Elias. It just seems like it makes too much sense.
Yeah, I think if they signed Framber Valdez, which I think is a legitimate, I think the Orioles should be the favorites to get Framber. Mike Elias loves his former Astros. It's like it just lines up perfectly. He's a little bit older than a bunch of the other guys that are hitting the market, so maybe the cost in years could be a little bit less, which we've seen with the Burns offer that he's willing to go more in money versus others, but less in years. So could be the perfect fit for Framber Valdez. Yeah. Would I love to see Kyle Tucker, the other former Astro connection? Yeah, that'd be amazing. But I think they're going to save that money for trying to keep Gunnar Henderson and guys like that around in Baltimore. So I think that's a pipe dream. Plus, we have our own Kyle Tucker at home with Dylan Beavers. And yeah, I think Framber Valdez, Ranger Suarez would be, you sign one of those two lefties for the middle to top of your rotation, and then you trade for another pitcher, whether it's Sandy Alcantara, obviously the big name, but he still has a 7 ERA on the season, or maybe like Cabrera for another pitcher from the Marlins who seems to have figured it out. Either way, you sign one of the lefties there and you trade for a pitcher. That's my dream offseason.
I would love to have Kyle Tucker for a lot of reasons. I think that it would give them the veteran bat that could anchor this lineup. You could slot him in right field. And I think that, it's a contract that I don't think would look good on the back end if you're going to go with the market rate. But I think at the same time, the regression curve with Tucker is not going to be so steep that you're going to regret making that deal when it gets to year 4 or year 5. Fromber, Valdez, or Ranger Suarez would both be good fits for this team. One other option I would throw out there, if they do trade him at the deadline, I wouldn't mind seeing them bring Ryan O'Hearn back into the fold. He seems like he's a good presence in the clubhouse. They've resurged his career here. And maybe there's, I don't think that he's going to be in line for a huge payday this offseason, but maybe there's a reasonable 2 or 3 year deal where you can bring him back as a first base DH option while you ease in Samuel Basallo to the majors. So that's another move that I would like to see the Orioles make, even if they do move on from him at the deadline.
Bobby's got more questions. Do we just want to lump these together?
Yeah.
What level?
Go. Thank you, Bobby, for the questions.
What level does Nate George end the season at? And speaking of Nate George leaving Delmarva, when does pitcher Esteban Mejia make his Delmarva debut? What are we thinking?
All right. Well, Esteban Mejia, that's an easy answer because I think there's a week left in the FCL season thereabouts. So as soon as that's over, I think him and Jordan Sanchez will be taking a flight together or a drive together, whatever it may be, up to Delmarva. So that's the answer there for me. And Nate George, I think, could get to Aberdeen before the end of this month. And I think he gets a week of play at Chesapeake at the end of the season as a reward and starts back there in 2026.
I love the aggression there with George, but I've got a different answer, which is that I think he will end the year at Aberdeen.
Which is still impressive.
Which is still really impressive. That's still really impressive and way more aggressive than we would have expected the Orioles to be with him coming into this year. I think he'll end at Aberdeen, and I think Mejia, just about when the FCL season ends. So in a week or two, he should be debuting, I guess 2 weeks left in the FCL season. Thank you, Simpkin. 2 weeks left in the FCL season. So 3 or 4 weeks, I think you see Mejia in Delmarva.
Yeah, talk about a rise. I think we're going to talk about him a little bit more in a second, though. But with George, I want to say double A as well, but I will say high A. But it was funny if you're watching us live, then you've got the same hints of the article that Andy just mentioned. His article, but if you're listening on the podcast feed, the article is out now at the Banner. His talk with Nate George when he went down to watch Delmarva speak with him, and I thought it was funny, hinting at he wants to become better at running the bases. And like that's one thing that we've talked a lot about over the last couple of weeks is he's been caught stealing a lot so far. Right. So that is one big key area of his game where it's like, all right, over the next couple of weeks when he's in Delmarva, let's see if those numbers continue to improve. So let's look at the swing and miss. Let's look at the strikeout rate. Let's see if he can continue to keep that at a respectable level. And if he starts doing that and more balls start going over the fence, which I think he is on the verge of doing here, once he settles down just a little bit, once you start to see him kind of settle in and use that, I talked about this last week, I think it was, where he starts tapping into this, that firecracker high ball of energy that he has. I don't even know if there is a word to describe it. He is sonic on a baseball field. If he can kind of harness that a little bit and you start seeing those results on the field quickly, then yeah, I'd say double A is certainly not out of the question here, which, and I like Andy's quote of saying, oh, he's a 16th round pick playing like a first rounder. And that's what Colin Woody said. Some people say he plays like Mike Trout. So, I mean, we're looking at quite the prospect here.
It's kind of an insult to Nate George at this point, but I don't see him hitting the IL. Knock on wood.
This episode brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can get a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help find you options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you.
For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just go to getcopperhead.com. That's getcopperhead.com for your 2 free gifts with purchase. Getcopperhead.com.
Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details.
At Capella University, we believe accessible education can make a difference. That's why we offer scholarship opportunities to all eligible students. Un futuro diferente está más cerca de lo que crees con Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
We'll jump now to this question from Ben Dewars. In the same theme, talking about Esteban Mejia. Is him being number 3 on Baseball America's list for the Orioles too aggressive, the emergence of the next big thing, or a little of both? And for those who might have missed it, Mejia was recently ranked 3rd on Baseball America's updated top 30 for the Orioles system. That came on the heels of the outlet bumping Mejia into the back end of their top 100. So
number 84.
Very high praise nationally for Mejia. But what are our thoughts on that? Too aggressive, just about right, or a little bit of both?
Not too aggressive. I mean, Baseball America doesn't do things like this for clicks. I mean, and what clicks would they get? It's just this random, international 18-year-old on the Orioles. I don't think that's bringing home the clicks. I think they were just wowed by, Josh Norris in particular was wowed by his in-person viewing of Esteban Mejia's outing or two that he saw. So, yeah, I mean, we were obviously high on him, especially Nick early on last year. And I think this just enforces our opinion and maybe gets us to where we were going to eventually get a little bit faster, because it's more information for us to digest, because Josh Norris went out there and told us the velocities, told us what he saw, which helps us in our evaluation. And yeah, he's certainly getting a bump up my list after being number 84 overall in all of baseball on Baseball America, the best outlet for prospect rankings and evaluation and analysis, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't think it's too much too soon or helium. Yeah, I think very good chance that he's the next big thing. Also, Keelan Murphy back in action today in the FCL at the time of this recording. So get this pair of Thunder and Lightning together in Delmarva sooner rather than later and see what happens.
And considering Keelan Murphy starts of the year with Delmarva, that line in his rehab outing in the FCL today was fantastic. I was happy with it. I think just 2 walks. You go 2 1/3 or 2 innings, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. Pretty decent line. I'm a bit more cynical just at the national list overall, like all of them. And this is in no way of saying like, oh, we're better. We watch more of these guys, blah, blah, blah. They know way more than I will ever know. I think he deserves to be ranked that highly, but I think the cynical part of me is thinking like, this is an international pitching prospect in the Orioles system who someone did go see him live. So now they're going to push that a little bit harder because they saw him in person. He has super loud tools. And this is an Orioles system that doesn't have outside of Basayo, on the national scale. Of course, if you're listening to us on a regular basis, you're well aware of who these international prospects are who have been climbing the ranks the last couple of years. But I feel like you can fit a couple of things here by sticking him up this high, in that this is an Orioles pitching prospect and an international pitching prospect. And we saw him live. We got this film. Check this out. It all fits. And we're really going to push this. Again, that's not taking anything away from Esteban Mejia. That's just my cynicism towards these national lists and how they're put together. But I do think he deserves it. But I do think maybe just a slight aggressiveness, just because it's also just fun to have this 18, 19-year-old arm sitting here at number 3 in the Orioles system. And you can say, hey, I appreciate it, though, because you can look at this and say, hey, they can scout and develop international pitchers as well. So
if I could take just a small devil's advocate take on that, is that, yes, I do agree with what you're saying. Also, we're able to focus more on just one team. Don't have to worry about any others, while these national outlets have to worry about 30 teams all at once. But at the same time, this guy, Josh Norris, is seeing a bunch of these guys that we're not able to see on other teams and be able to compare Esteban Mejia to them, which also I think, could go the other way, could lend credence to the correctness, I guess, of it.
I tend to think that it is somewhere in the middle. Mejia is very deserving. There's no question about that. And the stuff backs up the results. I don't think that anybody would look at what he's done this year and say it's a fluke. It is aggressive, though, in the sense that he's only 18. He's yet to pitch at a full season level. And, if there's one thing I think we can look at his results so far in his career and know that he needs to work on, it's his command. And that's not an uncommon issue with young pitchers. In fact, most 18-year-old pitchers in the minor leagues, I would guess, very broadly speaking, have command problems. So that's not unusual, but it is something that they are going to have to work on with him. And I want to put this out there, though, because I know that we're going to have to answer this question when we do our list in a few weeks for the midseason update. Are either of you at a point where you would put Mejia ahead of Trey Gibson or Michael Ferret? I'll take Braxton Bragg out of the equation because of the injury. So just looking at Gibson and Ferret, who all three of us are very high on, would either of you feel comfortable putting Mejia ahead of him?
Nope. Me personally, no. Just because these guys are, and look, I've said it in the Discord, like, we've been high on Gibson, Ferret, Bragg, well, not Bragg until this year, but Erman, these guys, since they were popping up in Delmarva with these results in Aberdeen and in the national outlets, they just literally do not care until you get to Double-A, unless you're like a name or a high draft pick, which, again, it's fair because of the just amount of guys that you would have to cover there, because especially became noticeable to me when a Baseball America chat after their latest update, JJ Cooper responded to a question about the Orioles have some intriguing arms, any possible top 100 guys in there. And he said, yeah, Bragg and Gibson seem like they could certainly play their way into that. not mentioning Michael Ferret in the same sentence as those guys means, oh, Ferret's not in Double A, so he just doesn't matter right now. So, but for me personally, these guys have done it, and I think they have maybe not the upside that Mejia has, but I think Gibson and Erman and Ferret and Bragg, they obviously have a higher floor, and they're getting closer and closer to knocking on the door of the majors. So I personally am not there yet, but I couldn't argue against it just based on ceiling.
Yes, if you go just like 100 percentile outcome, like sure, what they still have Kobe Mayo on the list, right? He's their number 2. So
he's like 63 overall or something.
Yeah, so yeah, that's right, because they keep guys on their prospect list until they're like 36 years old. But it's I think if you look at 100th percentile outcome, sure, Samuel Basayo, stud, uber prospect. So technically, you take Kobe Mayo off because he's not a prospect. They would have Esteban Mejia is really number 2 on their list. Could you? I mean, this is a tall kid. He's what 6'2", 6'3". He's throwing now 102. He touched 100 last year, I'm pretty sure. So if he's added 2 ticks to the fastball this year, they've got, I don't have the reports in front of me, all the secondaries and
2 double plus potential offerings in the slider and changeup.
So yeah, like you take all that into account. Dylan Beavers, I mean, probably more of like a platoon-ish outfielder, right? But maybe a strong side of platoon there in the major league level. Enrique Bradfield Jr., if he's an everyday center fielder, like, I mean, he's speed and defense primarily. How much is he going to hit at the major league level? I don't really see any, to their argument, I don't really see anybody on like 100 percentile outcome basis here. Like who has Esteban Mejia beat? I think that is a tough question. But yeah, I'm not willing to put him ahead of the older guys yet, because these older guys are crushing it in the upper levels and not getting the respect, some of them, that they deserve already.
Yeah, Nick, I think it's a fair lens to look at it through, because if I had to say objectively out of Mejia, Gibson, Ferret, who has a higher ceiling, I would take Mejia just because of the age and what he's doing for being as young as he is. But balancing it out a little bit more is where I would favor Ferret or Gibson, because they're doing it at higher levels. And in theory, at least, there's less room for error. I've talked about at length with Ferret what I believe he could accomplish. I think his ceiling is actually pretty high. I think Gibson's ceiling, which, a year ago we might have been happy with back-end starter. Now it's looking maybe a little bit more like a mid-rotation arm. Could be Gibson's ceiling, which would be great for an undrafted free agent. So their ceilings are high as well. But yeah, I think Mejia's, out of the 3, does have the higher ceiling.
Yeah, and this could quickly change for me personally if Mejia hits Delmarva and continues or builds on, gets better than he has been even this year in the FCL. And if they want to next year start him at Aberdeen and he's like Yuri Perez type ascent, then clearly he's going to jump high on our or my list at least. But yeah, for now, yeah, I think I have a pretty good idea of where I want to put him on that next list.
Can we just be one of the teams that Andy referenced that says on the pitching side, they see the analytics and say this will play the major level, so we're going to shoot these guys up? Yeah, another podcast, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, completely agree. Here's another question from Ben talking about the 2026 outfield. Who is in Baltimore between Judd Fabian, Dylan Beavers, and Enrique Bradfield Jr., and what is their role? Zach?
At the start of 2026, I'm going to say that Beavers is the only one of the 3 in Baltimore, because I do think that they'll add to the outfield over the offseason, and that's going to leave someone out. And given that Beavers is healthy right now, Fabian's on the IL, but that Beavers has probably addressed more of the question marks surrounding his game this year than Fabian has, although both are having, I think by any reasonable measures, good seasons. Beavers, I think, has addressed more of the questions about his game, specifically the swing decisions and the power. So I think that he'll be in the major leagues. And then I think Bradfield and Fabian will both be in Norfolk and kind of rotating between left field and center field. Fabian will be on the 40-man and will be the first outfielder up in the event of a need. And Bradfield will play his way into consideration for a late season call-up, especially if there's an opportunity to use him as a pinch runner in games in September or the playoffs.
Yeah, I got nothing to add to that. I fully agree with that as well. I think it's Bradfield is at best case scenario, I do think late 2026, just because he's had multiple injuries now. And when he has been on the field, he had a couple of games there where he really started to look like, okay, this is the Enrique Bradfield Jr. that we were getting super excited about at the end of last year based on how the bat was improving. But then all these injuries continue to knock him out this year. So I think you play it safe with him the rest of the way. You know, you still got a lot of work to do with his bat. So I do think he is late 2026. And I like that idea of kind of Fabian being your emergency guy down in AAA. So,
yeah, I completely agree. You nailed it, Zach. If I could just refine it, I'd say Bradfield mid to late 2026, depending on, you know, how the rest of this season goes and if any improvements get made in the offseason into 2026. Fabian, yeah, I think perfectly said. He'll be on the 40-man. He's the first reserve outfielder that you're going to dip to AAA when you need, if and when you need. Especially if Ramon Laureano is brought back on that team option. I think that kind of puts Fabian as the Laureano in waiting, I guess you could say, Ramon in waiting. And Dylan Beavers, I think it's like, remember Heston Kjerstad? Well, forget about him. It's Dylan Beavers now in right field against right-handed pitching at least. I think, yeah, he should get a real run at some playing time right away in 2026 because he deserves to get a month or so of playing time at the end of this year.
Go a question now from Penton Nice 36. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Excluding players currently outside the org, who will be the best hitters by WRC Plus in 2026 and 2027? Now, I'm going to add a wrinkle to this and say best major league hitter 2026, best minor league hitter 2026, and the same for the following year. Nick, I will start with you.
Oh, you threw the wrinkle in. I think the easy one is just at the major league level. I still think it's going to be just Gunnar Henderson. I just think one season where he missed all spring training, entire team plays like shit for a while there. Like this, it's not changing the idea that Gunnar can still be one of the best players in all of baseball. And I'm sure we can do a much deeper dive into Gunnar's season. Wanted to ask Andy a little bit about Gunnar, but he just continued to talk about a lot of other great topics. So just let him ride when he was talking. But yeah, like I'm still going with Gunnar there. On the minor league side, top WRC plus for 2026, 2027. Basayo's out of the equation because he'll be at the major league level. Who are the leaders this year right now in WRC plus? I'm wondering. I will go with, I don't know. This is a tough one. I don't like the wrinkle. What do you got, Bob?
All right.
Think about it.
2026, completely agree. Gunnar Henderson. 2027 majors, I would say Samuel Basayo. 2026 minors, I want to say Nate George, but I just don't know if his I think he'll be like probably the best breakout hitter, but just doesn't walk enough, maybe not quite enough power for WRC plus to be the highest. So I want to say Thomas Sosa in a breakout, and then 2027 in the minors, I'll say Steven Martinez. Yeah, I think that's what I'll go with.
Good picks. I'll go with Gunnar for both years in the major leagues just because, as Nick alluded to, for everything that has gone wrong for Gunnar this year, he's still been worth over 2 F4 and has a WRC plus at just under 120. So he's shaken off that bad start. I think that when you look at the stat line at the end of this year, it's going to tell the story that he is one of the best hitters in the game, or one of the best hitters on the team, and when healthy could be easily a top 10 player in the game. And then for minors, I'm going to go, this is tough because we still don't officially know what's going to happen with High A next year. If it's going to be in Aberdeen or if it's going to be in Frederick, because that's going to affect a lot of things. But I will say, for the sake of this argument, that it's in Frederick, and Jordan Sanchez plays at least half a season there, and he leads the organization in WRC plus. And then the following year, it will be Nate George.
I like it.
I'm throwing Josh Lorenzo's name in there.
I thought about that one too, yeah.
He's at a 136 WRC plus already this year, and he's just now settling in. And that, Jesus Christ, that grand slam he hit the other day, Delmarva, that bat speed, I want bat speed numbers on Joshua Lorenzo, because I don't know if I've seen a minor leaguer in this system this year swing a bat as hard as that was. And I couldn't believe the exit velo was only 104.
It's only because he's like 18, but
yeah,
but yeah,
those EVs are going to, I think, skyrocket here over the next 2 years.
absolutely.
All right, draft question. From a couple of draft questions coming up here. First one's from Vivek. With the draft 6 days away now, by the time you're listening to this on the podcast feed, like 3 days away, how would you rank these 5 players and which direction the Orioles should go if available at 19? So all these guys are available at pick 19. I'm assuming this question. How would you rank them as far as who the Orioles should pick? And it is Jace Laviolette from Texas A&M, Wahiva Aloy from Arkansas, Xavier Nyans, the high school infielder, Ethan Conrad from Wake Forest, and Cam Cannarella from Clemson. How are you guys ranking them?
I could go. First for me is Aloy. I think that would be a really exciting pick out of the college ranks there. And then you can go for the high school pick with one of the picks at 30 or 31, and even hope maybe that 2 of these other guys are still available by then. Second, I would put Xavier Nyans, just because I think that's who we took with our first pick in our mock draft that you should go check out if you haven't already. And I think he's just a really high upside power infielder from the high school ranks. Then I would go Ethan Conrad, who we took with our 30th pick in that mock draft. Then I would go Cam Cannarella, just super solid center fielder from the college ranks, and Jace Laviolette would be dead last for me, and I'd probably put about 15 other names ahead of him too.
My list is going to be similar, except I'll flip Nyans and Aloy, and it's a close call there. Either way, you can make it argument for either. I would go Nyans just because I think both players have question marks with their hit tools, and I'm a little bit more comfortable taking a chance on a high school kid who's younger and should have more development time to iron out those issues. Not to mention that with his athleticism, I think that even if he doesn't stick at third base long term, you're looking at a pretty solid corner outfielder. I would then put Aloy too. I really, really like Ethan Conrad, but I do think that they could probably get him at either 30 or 31. So he's going to go third for me, followed by Cannarella, and then Laviolette, who maybe it's just the year that Vance Honeycutt is having is making me question the high upside but very questionable hit tool college player. But I don't want to see the Orioles go down that path again.
My ranking is, I'm going to go Aloy first. I said many months ago that I would put Aloy as my number 2 college shortstop in the class behind Ava Arquette. I think was the consensus guy, but even ahead of Merritt Houston when he was higher up on draft lists. Just that power from the right side. He's improved his swing decisions as well. He's a big guy, but I think consensus pretty much agrees that he could stick it short. So I think right-handed hitter with that type of power from the shortstop spot, it's going to be hard to find. Golden Spikes winner, not going to go wrong with Aloy there. Then I'd go Conrad 2, Nyans 3, Cannarella 4, Laviolette 5. I think you can probably get Cannarella at 30 or 31 if you really want him. But honestly, if you have a high evaluation on Conrad and you being the Orioles, I wouldn't want them to risk Conrad falling to 30 or 31. And I say you just take him at 19 because I think who Ethan Conrad is now and what his ceiling is, I think that gap is pretty massive. And so I would be willing to take that bet there with a guy like Conrad. It was a shoulder injury. He got diving for a ball in the outfield. That's why he missed. He was showing big improvements. The Laviolette thing, and maybe this is a bigger conversation. We could probably hold it for draft night when we need to fill the void there, waiting for the pick. And if he's still available and everybody starts clenching a little harder as he doesn't get picked and he get closer and closer to 19, I'll just throw this out there with Laviolette. He's not my top choice. He's not my top choice by far if he's available, but he does have truly immense power from the left side. He pulls the ball in the air at an elite rate. He could play center field. It's rocky, but maybe. I just think the whole Texas A&M program was a disaster last year. The man broke his hand, came out the next day and got a base hit to carry the team on his back. Yes, there are whiff questions. Yes, there's platoon risk. The hit tool, the red flags, all of that. I just think that, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here in general, because I don't think very many Orioles fans at all want Laviolette if he's at 19 because of the Vance Honeycutt situation. Speaking from like an organization, like how the organization is probably viewing this, picking at 19, it's probably really, really difficult to pass on a guy with the upside that Laviolette has when you're not picking it at the top of the draft. So I would just say prepare for Laviolette to fully be the pick. And I say with no inside information, but this is also me pointing out positives to start the preparation process for myself when he inevitably is the pick of the Orioles at 19.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you.
For a limited time, you can get a free pocket pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just go to getcopperhead.com. That's getcopperhead.com for your 2 free gifts with purchase. Getcopperhead.com.
Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details.
At Capella University, we believe accessible education can make a difference in people's lives. That's why we offer scholarship opportunities to all eligible students. Whether you're considering a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, our teams will walk you through the process and help you get the savings you're eligible for. Furthering your education is an investment in yourself. Entonces, ¿qué estás esperando? Un futuro diferente está más cerca de lo que crees con Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Yeah. Baseball America did their staff mock 3.0 today at the time of this recording, Monday, the July 7th. And they had the Orioles taking Conrad at 19 and then Nyans at 30 or 31. So I guess could go either way. Depends if they float one or the other down and, give someone more to sign here. It's all the politics that we can't really get behind or we can't really know about on draft night. But here's another draft question from KTG TV, who would like to know, what would your dream draft look like with the first 3 picks? And also on the flip side, what would your worst nightmare draft look like with the first 3 picks? Zach?
So I will actually go with our mock draft the way that our first 3 picks stacked up. Xavier Nyans at 19, Ethan Conrad at 30, and Gage Wood at 31. I really think that would be a solid front 3 because you get the high upside in Nyans. You get Conrad, who I agree with Nick, a pretty high floor prospect as it is, but there's more projection there. He could be even better than I think we realize. And with Wood, right-hander who I think fits a lot of the traits that the Orioles like. And as I mentioned on our episode last week, his worst pitch is the changeup, and that's the one pitch that I'm absolutely confident that the Orioles can fix in some way, shape, or form, or find an alternative to. So if anyone can take that mix and make it into a starter mix, I feel like it's going to be the Orioles. And then for me, the worst picks that I could see, and I don't think this will happen, but I will throw it out there, is that 2 of the 3 first picks are Laviolette and Mason Neville, and that the third pick is somehow an underslot sign, because I think that's a lot of redundancy, not to mention 2 guys with very risky profiles. Laviolette has the higher ceiling of those 2. There's some parts in Neville's game that are a lot of fun, and I know that there are Colton Cowser comps thrown around with him, but I don't know that his hit tool is as good as Cowser's was coming out of the draft in 2021. So I do think that there's a lot of risk with that one. So I know I don't mention a third player specifically, but having the top of the draft built around those 2 guys wouldn't sit well with me.
Fair. My dream, and I'm going to go against the grain here. I'm not capitulating to Orioles need to draft pitchers in the first round crowd. But I'm going to go a little bit pitcher heavy here and say that it's Wahiva Aloy at pick 19. You get him to fall. And then you're taking Anthony Ianson from LSU, right-handed pitcher. And then at 31, doesn't matter the order, 30 or 31, you're taking AJ Russell from Tennessee. Kind of an outrageous pitch mix, including his fastball. Had the complete Tommy John, full reconstruction, the whole deal. So he's going to be fresh off that injury, was able to get some innings this year for Tennessee. So he's been back on the mound already. He probably would not pitch for the Orioles down in the minor leagues this year, but would be full go next year. That would be a lot of fun. Bring those 2 high-powered arms into the system and get your high-powered shortstop as well. This, like, worst case, again, there are 500 different paths the Orioles could go down, and I'm going to be excited no matter which way they go. I will say the one thing I have not liked is, and it was actually Joe Doyle's latest mock draft, and I have a ton of respect for Joe. I love his work, fantastic work, but he had Luke Stevenson, the catcher from UNC, mocked to the Orioles at 19. Nah, I don't want that at all. Like, he's a fantastic player, not in an Orioles uniform. No thanks.
I'll start with the negative side for me because, like Nick said, I almost feel like there's almost no combination of those first 3 picks that I could just hate all of them. I think, I guess I could say the worst would be Vance Honeycutt, Griffith Farrell, Ethan Anderson, but Jace Laviolette, and then I guess a catcher, and then another
Henry Godbout. Come on, man.
yes, one of those.
I'm leaving the stream. If it's Henry Godbout, I am leaving the stream. Just warning you guys.
Fair enough. But dream scenario, to be positive, I think would be Aloy at 19, Conrad at 30, and then either Nyans or Josh Hammond, someone, or Steele, Steele, Hall, a high upside, a high school guy with the 3rd pick would be the dream for me. Or even like the latest Baseball America one was Conrad, Nyans, and Devin Taylor. I would take that as well. So, yeah, I think there's way, way more possibilities. It's like if you're an MCU fan or have seen those movies, the Infinity War, when Doctor Strange is like calculating the odds of what it would take for this to be a bad first 3 picks for the Orioles, and he's like, there's 1 out of 700,000 million possibilities. So yeah.
Oh, me again. Awkward silence. This is from A Gains, Alex, I believe. Any surprises from the minors that can come up and help in the bullpen if they end up selling their rentals, Soto, Dominguez, etc.? So who do you guys like down in Norfolk right now to get a shot in the big leagues?
I'll start because I actually think there's some really, really interesting arms at AAA right now. Colin Selby, who I was high on this time last year when the Orioles picked him up and his pitch mix, he's been outstanding, especially of late. But on the season, he's got a 2.38 ERA over 22 2/3 innings, 31 strikeouts to 12 walks. And even when he's got a couple shots in the majors, he's looked pretty good and struck out more batters than innings pitched. Yarmil Geraldo is I'm really high on 3.09 ERA over 23 1/3, 34 strikeouts to 6 walks. Just seems like, again, of late, he's been striking out more batters. Even when like the whole pitching staff is blown up, he'll just be randomly in there, 2 innings pitched with 4 strikeouts. Cade Stroud, if you'll remember, he had like a 7 ERA early on in the year. Well, it's down to 4.70, 38 strikeouts to 13 walks over 30 and 2/3 innings. And if Carlos Tavares is still alive, I'm not sure. Levi Stout, I'm still high on. He has an 8 ERA. I know the Orioles like his stuff, but I don't know if it's going to happen. Gillies, we talked about on the last episode. And the last name, shout out to Vivek, Grant Wolfram Alpha. He's got a 3.76 ERA for the Tides since he was claimed, 29 strikeouts to 8 walks in 26 and a third innings. And if you really get granular over the last, I don't know, month to 5 or 6 weeks, he's got like an ERA around 1 and way more strikeouts than walks. He's just been really, really good. From the left-handed side, big, tall, 6'6", 6'7", lefty. So throws gas. I'd be curious.
Yeah, Wolfram was actually the name I was thinking of, especially if Soto is moved. That could be your lefty that you put in there. And, you wouldn't necessarily use him in the same spots you're using Soto now, but it would give you a left-hander that could give you some innings down the stretch. I think that Colin Selby, the way he's pitching, deserves a shot at the major leagues before the season ends. And even if they don't move a lot of relievers at the deadline, I'd still like to see if they can find a way to make that happen. Levi Stout, I think that's a good call as well. Really, it's a pretty interesting mix of arms down in Norfolk. And like I just said about Keegan Gillis, I would love to see it happen. I think there's a possibility that it could happen. But with how slow they were to put him up from AA to AAA, it would have to be a really quick turnaround to get him to the majors before this season ends.
Yeah, you guys touched on them all. I'm still going to pound the table for Stout. His decline coincided directly with me writing an article about him over on Substack. So that's my fault. I ruined Levi Stout. But there's no denying the stuff. The stuff is unbelievable. It just looks like Seattle Mariners, Cincinnati Red Levi Stout again over these last couple of weeks, unfortunately.
Before we go to a final segment, we do have a question from a live listener at Pigtown Sports. Do we see any playing time after the deadline for Jeremiah Jackson? Bob, I'll start with you there.
I certainly think so, because his heater that he started out when he was first promoted to AAA has now got enough. It's a heater 113 plate appearances later. He's batting .376 with a, hold on a second, OPS approaching 1,100. He's only walking less than 3% of the time, but he's also striking out less than 10% of the time. It's a 186 WRC plus, a 312 ISO. He is, and it's not even like a ridiculously high batting average for balls in play. He's got like 10 doubles, 8 home runs, 5 stolen bases. He chases, but he makes contact, and he makes hard, consistent contact. So, yeah, I think the Orioles might have found something here. I would not be shocked if after the trade deadline Ramon Arias is finally traded, when we were trying to trade him for like 3 years, and at the deadline in a kind of a surprise. And then you give Jeremiah, was it Jackson? He's that new to the system. I couldn't even remember his last name for a second there. Give him a shot to be like the new Joey Ortiz, Ramon Arias, backup utility infielder. Because, yeah, if he can hit like this, then he's got a place on the team.
Yeah. I pulled up his card here. I don't know if I can share. I'm an expert in sharing the screen now here. After that episode, here you go. I think that does it. For anyone watching live, look at that StatCast card there for Jeremiah Jackson. That's insane.
Beautiful.
100th percentile in WOBA and xWOBA. Yeah, barrel percentage, 94th percentile, max EV 111. 90th percentile EV, 105 at 66th percentile. But yeah, the chase. The O-swing percentage, 40% is first percentile walk rate, but 94th percentile in strikeout rate. Yeah, that's a lot of red. That's a lot of fun red card there. But yeah, I will say, I will capitulate on that and say that I just assumed he's 25 years old. You sign him on a minor league deal, you stick him in AA, and I'm just like, this was just a depth move. This is to get someone in AA so you can have Servideo and whoever else come up and fill the void up there in AAA. And he hits well in AA, and you're like, well, yeah, if he hits the ball hard, he's going to find success in Bowie because of that atmosphere there. I'm still not paying attention to him. And now it's been long enough at AAA where it's like, yeah, you should probably start paying a little bit of attention to him. And at least the utility option or a really valuable depth piece here, especially as the season closes out. And if the Orioles need more bats, give him some run. Another fantastic find here. Even if it's just AAA depth and some spot starts here and there, it's still a pretty unbelievable find for this organization.
Absolutely. When I look at the roster it's constructed right now, I have a hard time finding room for him unless either Urias is traded or there's another injury to the infield sometime in the next couple of months. And I think specifically it would probably be a Jordan Westburg injury, which we hope doesn't happen because we see the difference in the Orioles lineup with Jordan Westburg in it as opposed to it without him. But the fact that we're even talking about it, first of all, here on July 7th, really tells you something when he's a guy that was not on our radar at all when this season began. And I do think that if he continues to hit in AAA, it does make sense to bring him up because it gives you a chance, if nothing else, to see what you have, see if he is going to be part of your plans for 2026. Could he kind of be your Emmanuel Rivera type, where Rivera showed you enough late last year, you brought him back in the organization this year. Maybe Jackson's that guy down the stretch this season, but again, I have a hard time picturing where he would fit in with the roster as it's currently constructed. So I feel like if he does get to the major leagues, it probably won't be until the rosters expand in September.
Also, another guy who could make his major league debut post-trade deadline. Shout out to EJ's question earlier. And Vimael Machine, he's been pretty consistent in hitting well in AAA as well, not to the extreme extent that Jackson has. But yeah, another guy who I wouldn't be shocked if got a tiny bit of run before the season was over.
And with that, now we will head into our final segment of the night. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing. Located 1421 Ridley Street, Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre- or post-game drink. And while you're at the ballpark this year, be sure to check out the beer stand behind home plate where you can get one of their signature beers, The Bird is the Word. And in this last call segment, we're going to do our usual shout-out of players outside the top 30 portion of our top 50 for something they've done recently, whether it's been a good game, a good week, or just something interesting in their stat line that we want to point out. And I'm going to start with Bob this week.
All right. So I posted on our Blue Sky account usually I'm just copying and pasting from the Twitter, but every once in a while I will put an observation of my own. And I did that with Lissandro Sanchez from the DSL, who 17-year-old outfielder. The Orioles signed in January for around $300,000. He's been in the DSL, obviously, starting this year off batting .074 with a .305 OPS over his first 32 plate appearances. But since then, he's hitting .429 with an 1119 OPS, which is a 186 WRC plus, a 190 ISO, 12.5% walk rate, and 25% strikeout rate. This was a guy that I think when the international signing class was announced, he was a guy that just big power outfielder. And I just think it's cool to see him start to click, because a lot of the guys that did sign for big money, Michael Barrow, for instance, he's shown flashes of power, but not really have numbers you want to brag about. But it's cool to see a guy kind of figure it out as the season goes along. And then my pitcher is going to be Wyatt Cheney, who I just wanted to give a shout out because he was a guy that was a late round draft pick in 2022, a 10th round draft pick in 2022. And pretty quickly in 2023, after 50 innings, as they were stretching him out as a starter, went down with, I want to say, Tommy John, missed the rest of 2023, all of 2024, and then now with High A Aberdeen as a reliever, he's got a 2.83 ERA on the season with 2 saves over 28 and 2/3 innings, 38 strikeouts, so 31% strikeout rate to 20 walks. Walks are a little bit on the high side, but since June 4th, he has a 2.45 ERA, 18 strikeouts to 8 walks over 11 innings, so 36% strikeout rate, and again, 16% walk rate. So that's got to, commands the last thing to come back after Tommy John. But the stuff seems to be all the way back and performing well. So another potential relief prospect in the mix, unless they want to stretch him out again next year. We'll see.
Nice. I didn't write mine down on the sheet, apparently. I do have mine, though. It is my hitter. I'm going to go Colin Tufts, just because there's zero shortage of intriguing catching prospects in this system, obviously. 8th round pick last year out of Tulane. He was at UVA first and transferred to Tulane, so just hitting both those pipelines the Orioles have a chokehold on. Should probably let go of one of those pipelines, but missed the first month of the season to start the year, maybe a little bit more than a month. So first year as a pro, gotten off to a slow start here, a late start, but now he's 100 bats into his Delmarva season. Had a good week last week, 5 for 16, so a 313 average. Had a home run, 4 walks, 2 stolen bases. I went back and looked at his report coming out of the draft, and it said plus runner, not just for a catcher, but plus runner, super athletic, backstop, above average raw power, and plus arm behind the plate. So I'm curious to see how the rest of the year plays out for him now that he's healthy and settling in. And then my pitcher, just because we got a new pitcher to, I think we're going to see in the next 2-3 weeks, Brandon Downer, another draft pick from last year, 13th round pick out of Cal Baptist. Did not pitch last year and then started this year on the IL. He's rehabbing in the FCL. First rehab appearance was his first pro appearance. Did not go very well, but last week he went 4 shutout innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. So just excited to have another new arm in the system to watch, probably in Delmarva when the FCL season ends in 2 weeks.
Good choices. I'll start with my hitter, Felix Amparo, who had a good weekend, in particular, a good doubleheader performance on Saturday. In game 1 of the doubleheader against the Pirates, he went 2 for 3 with a triple and 2 RBIs, and he followed up with a 1 for 3 showing in game 2. Amparo had a really strong year last year in the Dominican Summer League. And if you look at the numbers he's put up so far in the FCL this year, they are a little underwhelming at first plus. 233 batting average, 350 slugging percentage. But there are some things in here that I find interesting. For one thing, he's walking a ton, and that was not something that he did last year in the DSL. He looks like he was a pretty aggressive hitter at the plate. This year, he's walking a lot more. 14.1% walk rate in the FCL compared to a 7.5% clip in the DSL last year. The strikeouts have gone up a little bit, but when you're seeing the walks go up, I think you go ahead and take that. And the other thing is he does have a slightly above average WRC plus 101. So there are some positive signs there for a guy that's had kind of a mixed bag of the performance at the plate this year. And then sticking with the FCL, though this pitcher is now in Delmarva, Andy Fabian got the bump up from the FCL to low A last week after a really solid run in the FCL, primarily pitching out of the bullpen. 17 innings with the Orioles, 2.12 ERA, 2.75 FIP, 3.32 xFIP, and he struck out 26 batters while walking 12. One thing that I notice about his stats that I find interesting about this season compared to last year is that his ground ball rate has plummeted. Last year, he had a ground ball rate just under 60%. This year, that figure's down closer to 40%. I don't know if that really means anything. I don't know if it's because he's working on something in those adjustments. He's not as reliant on the ground ball as he was last year. I also don't know that this is just something that doesn't happen in random 17-inning sample sizes and that as the year goes on, the ground balls are going to come back. But now that he's up in Delmarva and we'll be able to get the MILB TV feeds on him and hopefully be able to learn a little bit more about his pitch data, I'll be curious to see what adjustments he's making because he had a solid pro debut last year, and I thought that given his age, he was a guy that maybe could skip the FCL. That didn't happen, but he pitched well there. And now is going to be up in Delmarva. With that, that does it for this show. As a reminder, we will be on at a special time on Sunday night. We will have more details about that leading up to Sunday. So check out our social media channels for more details of that. And by the way, we have many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and sign up to become a member today. You can join at the $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to bonus daily shows from Bob, or bonus weekly shows from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list and patron-only channels in our Discord chat. So go check out patreon.com to learn more about those perks and sign up to become a member today. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.
At Capella University, we believe accessible education can make a difference in people's lives. That's why we offer scholarship opportunities to all eligible students. Whether you're considering a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, our teams will walk you through the process and help you get the savings you're eligible for. Furthering your education is an investment in yourself. Entonces, ¿qué estás esperando? Un futuro diferente está más cerca de lo que crees con Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.